First up, we have Philip Johnson. Philip is a solutions consultant at Iterable, and his focus is on solutionizing cutting-edge technology to help marketers bring their customers closer to the products they love. Prior to Iterable, he spent 6 years at Deloitte Digital implementing marketing and CX cloud solutions for some of the world's biggest brands. Philip, over to you.
Perfect. And hi, everyone. I'm a solutions consultant from Iterable, based out of our EMEA office here in London. And welcome to our session today, Getting Your Data Ducks in a Row. I'll be sharing tips on how to align your data, technology, and strategy to enable effective personalization for your customers. That's me. And in terms of today's agenda, I'll be starting with some industry facts, explaining the importance of data and personalization, then looking at the data model, so typical hurdles faced when trying to access and arrange your data and break it out of the silos that it often finds itself in. Then looking at the right technology, so understanding some technological requirements and things to look out for if and when you're looking for a new CRM platform. Then the data strategy, so particularly the 3 ascending levels of personalization maturity, and I'll be explaining those differences with some customer examples of our own, and then finally summarizing it all with some key takeaways, including a link to our free personalization for dummies guide. This is very much an interactive session, so be ready to respond to some polls. I'll have my eye on the chat, so yeah, please very much get involved, and yeah, let's get started. So foundations for personalization. So we all know this pandemic has proven that tailoring your marketing communications to the individual is no longer a nice to have and is very much a must have in today's digital experience. Here are some stats that showcase the value of personalization for consumers. So that first one, 91% of consumers are more likely to shop with brands who provide relevant offers or recommendations. So if I think to my favorite food delivery app, whenever they recommend the latest burger joint that is within a 5-mile radius of me via push notification, that's a great example of that. Then looking at that bottom stat, 90% of consumers are willing to share their behavioral data if additional benefits are provided that make shopping cheaper or easier. So Strava, who are an Iterable customer, I literally give them everything they ask for. So when I receive my year in review email in December, I can be sure that the stats are accurate enough to boast to some of my friends. But some key stats there around personalization. At Iterable, we believe effective personalization comes down to 3 primary areas, which I'm sure a lot of you would have seen before, mainly having the right data model, the right technology, and the right strategy. So we'll be taking a look at each in a little more detail. The right data model. So when we say data, there are different types of data and associated considerations. So zero-party data is data that a customer intentionally and proactively shares with a brand. So this can include preference center data in terms of which channels they prefer, purchase intentions, or personal contacts. So for example, something as simple as my first name appearing in an email or a push notification. Then first party data. So that is information that you as a brand are collecting on your customers. So behaviors, actions, or interests. So the act of me opening an app to view my bank account. And then collecting, storing, and surfacing both zero and first party data are key to treating somebody as an individual, but also making sure to respect their privacy as you do that, something that we'll touch upon shortly. And then once you have all of this data, segmenting and serving to different groups of people by their defined attributes. So an example of an audience might be show me all users who have opened the app more than 4 times in the last week, but are yet to make a deposit. Segmentation empowers marketers to create the right audience, to be targeted with the right message at the right time, something Skip alluded to earlier, but all ultimately driving to deliver a best-in-class customer experience. The problem isn't having the data. So brands have more data about their customers than they've ever had before. The question is, how do you use that data effectively and make it available in one place as opposed to existing in separate silos? So you need to allow your marketers to access and activate data without depending on engineering resource. You need an effective format where layers of customer interaction, behavior, and personal details are captured. So in this illustration on the left, you'll see a representation of an all too familiar relational table storage format. So at the top, you can see some zero-party data and behavioral data, which is stitched together to send messages through any of those channels that you see on the right. And then once somebody receives those channels and they engage with those messages, that engagement data is typically pushed back to your CRM platform, or whether that's a stack that has multiple components. But ultimately, a lot of the time that information is siloed off from one another because of independent storing formats. So this is often a problem for modern marketers working with legacy tech stacks. Data inside a silo requires a process to break it out. And the more time you're spending wrangling data, the less time you're spending actually doing what marketers do best, which is marketing. So our platform was, along with other modern marketing platforms, were very much designed to bring all of this crucial brand data together and make it easy for marketers to create data-rich experiences across any of the different channels that they might be executing across throughout the entire life cycle of that customer. So here's our first poll of the day. It would be great to understand what is the biggest challenge that you believe that faces your organization today. And hopefully you can see that poll in the chat. But if you can't, the 5 options are data quality, whether it's integrating your MarTech stack, whether it's internal alignment between CRM and engineering, whether it's simply just budget constraints, or whether it's a lack of strategy. So feel free to respond to the poll, and I'll be revisiting those answers shortly. As I previously mentioned, it's crucial in marketing that we treat customers as individuals, but we must ensure that their privacy is paramount. Apple's recent iOS 15 privacy update announcements have definitely made some marketers hover over the panic button. Ultimately, these updates are projected to make it much harder for marketers to know where and when a customer has opened an email that is delivered to Apple's native mail application. In terms of the wider industry, third-party cookies were already and always on their way out, and zero and first-party data were on their way in. And it's really on marketers to find new and inventive ways to connect on a personal level with your customers. So maybe focusing attention on steps beyond just open rates and looking to clicks and purchases. You're able to understand which users are most engaged with your brand, which allows you to be more targeted in your messaging and send it to those most engaged users. But despite the apparent gloom and doom around Apple's updates, this gold standard personalization example that I'm about to walk through is still completely achievable. So a journalist wrote about how this simple yet thoughtful email from Apple transformed the mundane chore of buying a new laptop into a powerful moment of personalized brand ubiquity. Essentially what happens is Apple targets owners of newly purchased MacBook Pros with a personalized message suggesting they explore their brand new Mac with one of Apple's online specialists. The key thing with this message is that it's sent 20 minutes after FedEx confirmed delivery of that MacBook Pro. So it's a relatively simple process, but one that invokes powerful emotions, ultimately creating a differentiated experience for the brand that people will go and talk about and evangelize. Most brands have all of that information that I just mentioned. So first name, transactional history, even integration with third-party service to confirm delivery. The issue typically is that they don't have all of this information in a single place, unified under a single customer profile. And this is shown in that middle section in the blue box as an obstacle. And this obstacle of having disparate data silos can often lead to an over-reliance on often already overstretched engineering teams, as shown in the middle on the green box at the bottom. Or perhaps on the left of the blue box, maybe you simply don't have access to that data. So in the example before, maybe you aren't integrated with FedEx systems, in which case you make a best guess to send the email 8 days after shipment. So maybe too late to have that wow factor, or even worse, it's too early before the product arrives, creating a really negative experience. On the right, maybe you're simply limited by the legacy of your platform. So waiting days to segment users via SQL queries, only a handful of people within your organization know, or using those same days to wait for a response to a support ticket. Many marketing teams have come to accept these limitations and obstacles and fail to take that step back to see the harm it has on their long-term goals. So I'm now going to revisit the results as to what was or what were some of the biggest challenges that you're currently facing as an organization. But I can see integrating your MarTech stack, so definitely understand that. So understanding where to fit your chosen platform into your existing stack. I can see data quality there as well. So understanding, the quality of your data, being able to interpret it. So moving on to the next section, having the right technology. So now that you've defined and structured your data effectively, you need the right technology to apply it. So a lot of modern marketing platforms, they offer marketers a way to securely house customer data from various applications and unify your data across your MarTech stack. Here with Iterable, you can see with our platform, all of the different types of data that might feed into your project in real time. And we have the unique ability to store it in a way where it can be activated as part of a highly personalized experience that is ultimately informed by AI, but delivered across any of those different channels that you see there. So email, mobile, in-app, and direct mail. Ultimately, when evaluating your CRM platform, it's key to ask some of these questions, mainly how easy is it to integrate your chosen platform with your existing MarTech stack. The platform you choose might have everything that you need, but it's no good if you're still not able to access your data and it's not able to integrate with your existing data in a real-time and scalable way. I think the second thing I would ask when looking for a new platform is how easy is it to execute your campaigns across your different channels, but ultimately at the same time. So maybe within a single workflow, having a cross-channel campaign and making it just as easy as it might be to set up an email campaign, to do so for a push campaign, and being able to do that within a single workflow, utilizing the same data either on a user profile or the event that might have triggered that workflow. Then the third thing I would look out for is your chosen platform built to match your scaling ambitions. So we all hope that the businesses that we work for strive and continue to grow, and you want to make sure that any platform that you choose is aligned to those growth ambitions, so able to take not only the volumes that you have now, but any volumes that you might have in the near future. And then finally, but by no means least, I would definitely recommend looking into beyond the sales process. What does the post-sales support look like? So customer success managers, technical support specialists, how quickly they are able to reply to your queries and issues, but then also beyond that, viewing them as an extended part of your marketing team. So strategizing with them and your internal marketers as to how you're going to achieve your longer term goals. The right strategy. So experience is more important than ever in business to consumer relationships. And this quote really speaks to it. So what matters most and what you should let inspire and guide you is that people are changing. They desire digital and human experiences, and their values and demands for trust and purpose are front and center in decision making. Ultimately, customers want to genuinely feel connected to their brands, and they expect their favorite brands to reciprocate that feeling. So reflecting our customers' values, reinforcing trust, and bringing purpose to both ours and their interactions are all part of the new customer experience standards. Gianfranco from Aesop will very shortly be explaining some of the strategies that they employ today at Aesop. But as for this slide, I wanted to show a breakdown between the different levels of personalization that exists. Ultimately, personalization is a strategy and it's not a tactic, and it's one that takes time to develop. According to Gartner, I think it's over 40% of marketers report having a clear personalization strategy and roadmap. They also suggest that marketers take a step back to refocus on segments and test tailored recommendations to see what drives results. If you're unsure as a marketer where to start, or perhaps where to enhance your existing personalization strategy, I would ask yourself, where does personalization add the most value with your audiences? So when I'm solutionizing with customers, I always say start small, working into more complex and integrated ways to personalize your messaging at scale. So taking a crawl, walk, and run approach. Crawling is that first level you see on the left in the blue box of collecting actionable data. So hello, Philip, and being able to dynamically pull in my first name on an email. Then that second level is walking. So receiving that email 20 minutes after FedEx deliver that my MacBook Pro, that being personalized to my own delivery time, but making a huge impact as to my customer experience. Then third and finally is that most advanced running stage. So it might be showing a customer an email that has been tested on with multiple variants by an A/B experiment, offering me maybe an online specialist for that MacBook Pro, but one that is tailored to me and my preference in video editing, as an example. Another question here, and perhaps if the poll doesn't appear, please very much encourage you to put your answers in the chat. But would love to understand, what level of segmentation do you feel you're using today to create a more personalized approach? So is it that first level, so collecting actionable data, reactive personalization on attributes? Is it that second level, proactive personalization with user and event data? Or that third and final level, so individualization, but using it to craft dynamic and rich customer experiences? So yeah, please feel free to let us know where you think you are on the personalization maturity model. Going back to that first level, so crawling, where you're collecting and storing all the actionable data you'd want to use in your marketing, then using it reactively. So the example I keep using is having a customer's name appear within an email. And an example of that is shown here with one of our customers, blockchain.com. So they applied this very simple bit of personalization, which had a huge impact on their business. So again, it seems like a very small element of personalization. Some may think even too small to bother, but including someone's first name and simply only doing that led to nearly a 9% relative increase in click-through rates and engagement campaigns like the one that you can see here. So if you think on an effort to impacts ratio, this is definitely one I recommend trying yourself if you're not doing it today already. Then walking is at second level, so capturing user behaviors to trigger messages and define audiences and create granular segments that allow for highly targeted campaigns. This will in turn increase engagement and then ultimately revenue. So another example of this is Urban, who provide mobile and remote wellness services, and they also partner with Iterable. I actually use them myself and highly recommend them. But ultimately, I can select what is my goal. Where I'm based in London is already picked up via my location, and then perhaps if there's a particular treatment that Urban knows I might be interested in based on previous treatments that I've selected, all of this is now using my behavioral data to further engage me, but still deliver a personalized experience to me. And then finally, to run. So utilizing the most advanced personalization techniques that create rich and unique experiences for your customers. So an example might be an automated cross-channel workflow that sends a push notifications for softer communications, maybe an email with promotions and recommendations based on previous behavior, or going down to an SMS message for those more immediate transactional issues. A great example of this is Calm, and I'm a huge fan of Calm, and I imagine some of you will be too, especially given the last year and a half. But ultimately, Calm partner with both ourselves, Iterable, and Amplitude, the analytics application, to gain a deeper understanding of their customer behavior. They take a test and learn approach. So one example that you can see here is via their onboarding and nurture workflow. So through leveraging data and customer insights, they were able to 4x their revenue from email opens and reduce their onboarding nurture period from 27 to 15 days. So huge returns there based on those most advanced personalization techniques. Okay, so going back to the poll and understanding where you are. So yeah, I can see a few of these quite a few of you selected level 2. So that proactive personalization with user and event data. So perhaps you're already capturing those events and then being able to immediately trigger workflows and create a more personalized message off the back of that. And then I can see some of you, which is great to see, you're already at that third and final level of advanced personalization. But it would be great to understand how you plan to either iterate on your kind of existing strategies and what your plans are going forward for even greater personalization, or to retain what you're already doing today. So key takeaways from today's discussion. I realize there's a lot of talking by me, but really appreciate you listening in and for the interactions. But I'd say number one, start small and make those incremental changes. So as I said, take that crawl, then a walk, and then that running approach, and not making changes too quickly, and being able to iterate, but make those changes slowly as you do. Then that second one, capturing and consolidating your data in one place. This is one which is key to my own heart, just being able to make sure from a technological standpoint that you have access to all of this data that you might have in a data warehouse, transactional systems, but being able to unify it in one place and then really empower your marketers so they can use that data to execute some of the strategies that I've just walked through. Then finding the right technology. So touching on those points that I mentioned earlier, making sure you're looking out for the right things when choosing any part of your MarTech stack, whether that's the CRM platform, analytics tool, but making sure that it's true to your wider strategy. And again, key to my own heart, making sure that it's able to be integrated easily with your existing stack. Then understanding your customers and taking a cross-channel approach. So understanding your customers, they're making sure that you interpret this data by A/B testing, something that Kath will talk upon shortly, and being able to interpret your customers' data. Then taking that cross-channel approach and not being overly reliant on perhaps a single channel, and testing and seeing where you can get further engagement across your different channels. And then finally, keep iterating. So always room to test new things. I guess be brave, but going back to that first point, always start small. So you're not taking too much of a risk, but you're definitely venturing out there to expand the possibilities of your marketing program. The final plug from me is our free guide. So personalization for dummies. So there'll be a link in the chat provided by my wonderful colleague, Kalina. Otherwise, you can download this guide by scanning the QR code there. But within here, there's some great tips consolidated by our learnings from our hundreds of customers as to some of the key steps and strategies and tactics which we recommend for your personalization strategies. But that's very much the end of my session. Again, I very much appreciate you for interacting and listening to me. And thank you very much. I think Skip's going to join us now.
If you got to use that QR code, folks, that worked really well. So, but the link is also there in the chat. Philip, well done, mate. I mean, harsh circumstances to start. That was, that wasn't the way you want to start a race at all.
It's fun.
Really good presentation, and you hit on something there at the end that it's one of my mantras, which is think big, think bold, but start small and scale quickly. You can't boil the ocean because you'll just never get anything done.
Yep.
Anyway, okay. So a couple of questions for you. I liked your comment about greeting your customer by name. We always say that personalization is more than that. But if that's all you can manage, that's better than nothing, right?
Yep.
But one question I have, and this kind of leads into your whole data point as well. I hear brands that are, I'll talk to brands and they'll say they're afraid to use, dear first name because a lot of people have given just an initial, or maybe they haven't given the right, they've given Mickey Mouse. So dear Mickey instead of dear Philip. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. From a purely functional perspective, I would say you definitely want to make sure you have fallback options. So maybe with the platform that you're using to send messages, if it can have that conditional logic to say, hey, is there a name there? If so, great, show this. Otherwise, have that default option to say, hey there. So that would be my advice functionally. But in terms of, kind of strategically, I'd still say, as you saw with that blockchain.com example, if you can capture that first name, maybe there's some hesitation to ask too much of your customers. Maybe it's just in that sign up process. Maybe they do give you a Mickey Mouse name, and if anything, it can be a funny moment that they can update later. But if you can lean into any data, even if it is just that first name, and then use it within your messages, even just thinking personally, if I get a push notification that says, hey, Philip, maybe it's subconscious, but I'm just more likely to engage with that message. So I'd say do it if you can. And then from a functional perspective, just make sure that you have that backup so it doesn't show up as, hey, blank.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because even if they put something fake in there, that might drive more interaction. Because
exactly.
If I get something that says, hey, Mickey, I'm like, Mickey? Why did I think? Oh, I remember. I call myself Mickey. I use Harry Potter all the time, and I've got a fake phone number and a fake email address, all Harry Potter themed. It's great. But the other point, I guess, which is really important, is if I walk into a room, you might have guessed that Skip is not the name on my passport, right? And if I walk into a room and I introduce myself as Gordon, which is the name on my passport, and you call me Gordon, I can't get mad that you called me Gordon, because that's the name I gave you, right? So I always think brands are just a little bit too cautious, too conservative. So listen, we've got a question from Andrew Boddington. Says, hello, Philip. When bringing together the data from various systems, what do you use as the common match points to merge the data? In other words, what rules do you use to link the records to match up the records? The example he gives is lead email address or lead postal address. What's your recommendation on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and from my perspective, I'd say about 8 times out of 10, or maybe less than that, some customers they usually have their own unique identifier, and if they're able to kind of track that across their different systems, then wonderful, consolidate that within a single view. If not, then to your next point, using deciding what that identifier should be. Usually after a unique identifier, then email is probably the most preferred. So assuming that you are collecting email addresses everywhere, so maybe you have an app in which you don't force people to sign in, so you don't always have that email address. But if you do, I would say that would be the second. And then I think outside of that, so Iterable, for example, we partner with a lot of CDPs, so like Segment and Particle, and these platforms, it's their explicit job to do just that. So having that single source of truth for all of your different, scattered IDs and users, consolidating that, cleaning up that data, and pushing it neatly to your chosen CRM platform. So not everyone has a CDP. Some people have their own data warehouse and they carry out their system themselves. But ultimately, I would say try and sort it out before it reaches a CRM platform. But if you can't, then to answer your question, then I'd say user ID and then email address.
That's a really good advice. Get it done as early in the process as possible. There's no point moving around from a data logistics standpoint, moving around data that ultimately you won't be able to match up or won't be able to use. I would check out one caution, which I learned about the hard way just recently. I was doing some B2B marketing and working with some LinkedIn data. And of course, nobody puts their business address in LinkedIn. So matching on email address, we got a very low match rate. So we had to switch up to first name, last name, and company. But generally, I think you're right. Email addresses tend to be have a one-to-one relationship. Okay. So another question we have from I'm gonna go with Ivana Stefanovic. How would you explain customer experience? We have so many answers. Great question. What is customer experience?
That's a good, almost philosophical question that I would say. I think from and this is just speaking personally, but from my experience of what customer experience is, it's being able to at any point within a customer's life cycle to be able to control and, where possible, influence their experience with your brand. So maybe at those earlier touch points, they're only just learning about who your brand is, maybe through kind of Google Ads as an example. Maybe later down the line, they've signed up to your brand, but they still haven't made that first purchase. Maybe further down the line, they're 2 years in and they're a complete evangelist. But at any point throughout that life cycle, being able to connect with your customers and then influence how they feel about your brand. So whether that's surprising and delighting them, which is technique that Apple so often employs, as I kind of showed with that example. But yeah, a bit of a wishy-washy answer there, but I kind of interpret it as being able to influence and talk to your customers at any point throughout the life cycle of their interactions with your brand. Oh, you're on mute, Skip.
The story of the pandemic.
I know, classic. Yeah, indeed.
Actually, I don't have it with me. Usually I have a mug that says you're on mute. I just have the big S mug today. yeah, where the tech isn't getting us, we're getting ourselves. Anyway, you mentioned Apple, and you gave a great example from Apple in the presentation. But elephant in the room. I mean, you brought up Apple, so you opened the door to this one. It seems that all that any email marketer can talk about right now is Apple's new privacy changes. So, are you familiar with the story of Chicken Little?
No, I'm thinking of Stuart Little, which is something completely different.
That's
so no, yeah.
Chicken Little. This is a very American thing. So very quickly, Chicken Little. It's a kid's story about a little chicken, hence the name. An acorn drops in the chicken's head, and the chicken is convinced that the sky is falling and runs around telling the entire town or farmyard that the sky is falling, and nobody believes him because the sky's not falling. So is this a Chicken Little moment, or is this going to be a big deal?
Yeah, and a very good analogy, and I think very much that it is a Chicken Little moment. Not to say that it's not something that marketers shouldn't take seriously, but we've all seen kind of previous changes to, our move away from cookies and all these previous hurdles that marketers have had to kind of endure before and then adapt. So with this latest one for Apple, for iOS 15, which isn't out yet, I always put that caveat in there, it is meant to come out anytime between September and November. So you do have one, time to prepare, and two, we don't fully know what it's going to look like. But at the conference, it ultimately looks like they're going to make it harder for us, and marketers to gauge when and where a user has opened and engaged with any message that you sent directly to Apple's native mail app. And then there's some other features as well that kind of obscure access to users' data. But in terms of, is it the sky falling moment? I personally don't believe so, mainly because now, if your marketing strategy is initially looking at opens, you now want to look at that step beyond that. So at clicks of the actual email or complete purchases that are tied back and you can attribute to a campaign. And by focusing on clicks and purchases, yes, it's going to be a smaller portion, but these portion of users are going to be those more engaged users. And I think we all know if you're able to kind of target and nurture those most engaged users, actually, in terms of cost to benefit ratio, it can be just as worth it, if not more, just concentrating on that smaller portion. And then I would also say, if you, for any of your CRM platforms, a lot of you already have access, customer success managers and technical support, but it's a journey that we're all kind of walking through together. But I don't think that it's, the advent of the sky falling. I think it's kind of just is more focused on how to market to those who want to share data. So at the beginning of my presentation, I said Strava, I'm a keen cyclist, and I give them all of my data because I'm a big fan of the brand as well as, the activities around it. So I think it's about creating stronger emotions and connections with those that are already, connected with your brand, rather than trying to do a catch-all. And yeah, I hope that answers the question. A lot of waffling.
It did, but yeah, it did. And I'm right there with you. I'm a huge Strava supporter, user, big cyclist. We won't get into cycling because we will pick up the rest of the session. Yeah. And unfortunately, Philip, we need to move on. But before I let you go, I just want to point out that Tiny Nguyen has asked a question in the Q&A, and so we'll get back to you. Either Phil will get back to you directly, or we'll get back to you after the event. So thanks for asking that question, Philip. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening.